This is Straight from the Heart. I am your host, Kim Davis, where we are going to talk about any and everything, and we're going to be honest, and we're going to use facts. Today, I am really wanting to have this subject or talk about this subject. It is something that Kansas City has been on for a while, and now we are faced with this, a recall of the county executive. And I really want to talk about why it is economically not feasible, or that's my opinion. Let me say that. And I really want to know, does it really matter if we had waited one more year, or is this thing bigger than just the issues at hand? So today I have not only someone that knows, someone that worked with the Board of Elections. She is also a staff member here at the Chamber of Commerce. And she and I were talking, and she brought some real insight on what it's going to cost the taxpayers to have a recall. So if you would welcome our Director of Operations or Development, our Director of Development, Racquel Adams. She is a plethora of knowledge, but she knows about this election. So welcome.
Thank you.
So
I'm
let's
excited to talk about this topic as well.
Yeah, so we had a very candid and honest conversation the other day, and I learned a lot of things that I didn't know about the election and the Board of Election. And so tell us, one, I know that you've worked with the Board of Elections for years,
Yeah.
and so your duties right now. Tell us about what you do now. You have been working with the Board of Elections for years, and so your duties now, I'm sure you've worked many duties there, but your duties now at the Board of Elections is what?
So now I'm a poll judge, and as I've developed into a poll judge, my role has changed from just certifying registered voters, making sure that they're at the correct polling place, and making sure that their ballots are at the location that they are. And if their ballot isn't at the location that they are, that they can still vote, cast their ballot, and it will be counted in the district that it's assigned to. So as a poll judge, what I do is make sure that for the most part, we have a group of voters who we really appreciate and celebrate, who are very particular about using their military IDs, which are for veterans, IDs that don't expire. Sometimes that can trip up a poll, a ballot judge,
Yeah.
and then make them feel like, oh, well, this is not a valid ID, and they look a little different because your father was in the military,
Yes.
so something that people who have family that has military experience is familiar with, but I don't, and I was not. So I'm a researcher. So of course, when I first learned about it, I wanted to get more information. And so now I'm excited to serve as a poll judge because the voters that I work with and interact with have been voting for a long time. Their
Yeah.
vote is important to them, and every decision that the voters make, they show up and participate, and they are engaged in.
Yeah.
So the reason that we started having the topic of conversation is because I'm paid, as is every poll worker, poll employee, and what initiated the conversation was I said, well, if I'm paid the salary that I'm paid, even if there's only one of me and one of every other position at each polling place, that's a waste of a lot of money for this one question.
Yeah.
Voters may or may not know they can always see any election ballot prior to the election. You can go to Kansas City Election Board or whatever your local election board is, their website, and see a sample ballot. So when I got the assignment and saw the sample ballot, saw that it was one question, of course I asked why, because there's an election coming up soon.
In November.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
will resolve this whole issue. And I understand the taxpayers and the personal property tax and how the taxpayers feel about the county executive being solely responsible for that and the stadium, and how the voters feel the county executive is specifically responsible for that. But being in city government, being a lifelong resident of Kansas City, I have appreciated, and we have all benefit from Frank White's savvy
Yes.
for so long, and we've all seen the growth and the development in the Kansas City community. A lot of moving parts. I served on city council, served the current mayor when he was third district in district councilman, and as a legislative aide. So I've seen the work, the hands on, boots on the ground work that the county executive has had to do and that legislators have to do. So I understand that maybe the typical voter not understanding that it may seem like something being done to them or happening to them.
Yeah.
But ultimately, and you know, and you can speak to that, um, the ends justify the means kind of thing,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
kind of not being able to see the bigger vision because we're stuck in the minutia of, well, I don't want to pay 24% more properties.
Well, and I mean, if we were to get into the weeds or to the mud of things, um, the unfairness of making Frank White the sole bearer of the taxes and the stadium. So Frank White is one vote. And so Frank White was not the voices that was out at every rally, every meeting, every stakeholders meeting against the stadium. And I was for the stadium. I was for the downtown stadium. But I'm also sensible enough to know that there Frank White did not just uh, cause the downfall of the stadium on his own. Also, when it comes to taxes, the average resident, it surprised me. I quite frankly, it did surprise me to find out that the average property owner doesn't realize that the county executive does not raise taxes. He does not have the power to raise taxes. He does not write up a letter and have the state raise the taxes. Right. They just simply do the assessments. And if the and in certain areas, truth be told, and people are gonna push back on this and be all upset and all in the wide, but truth be told, many of these communities whose taxes were raised had not had a tax raise uh, in years, like decades. And so um, we complain about what's not getting done in our city. We complain about uh, what our needs are, the streets, the trash, the this, the that, but we don't want to have to pay for it. Right. And so I'm just really disappointed in the fact that we have, even in our legislators, that did not think enough about um, what it's going to cost the taxpayers to have a special election on September the 30th. And even if the election comes out, the numbers come out that Executive White is recalled, it's going to be 6 weeks before he'll even be removed, because it takes that long to certify, and you cannot remove him before it's certified. And then if you look at the 30th, 6 weeks from the 30th, it's going to take you past November election, which could have been done at the November elections. On top of which, his seat comes up again in November of 2026
Yes.
for 2027. So we have to me on one level, and I'm only speaking, this is not the I'm not speaking on behalf of the chamber. My views and opinions are not always aligned with that of the Heartland Black Chamber of Commerce. So let me make that disclaimer. But my view is this: when we have legislators who have spent more time with the fact that he was not attending their meetings than spending time getting things done
Yes.
in the meeting, or even legislators who would not budge in negotiating or would not collaborate,
Right.
and then blame one person for their lack of collaborating. Um, I I just think that we're utilizing the divisiveness of our country right here in our
Locally,
county.
I feel the
And
same.
it's a ugly situation because it does not have to be. I think that we could have great legislators and we could have great executive, uh, but at the end of the day, uh, people have to get out of their own personal feelings and go into these rooms with um, how do we serve the people, and then not use the people,
Right.
not use the people emotionally, use the people to get what we want. I listened to a lot of the interviews, and I was really surprised that there is no real meat on the bone. So,
Yeah,
what do you think?
I think that a part of what started our conversation was just the expectation for me as a voter, and I don't have a political agenda. I'm apolitical. I worked in the city, apolitical, worked for UMKC, apolitical. Uh that the community receive the community benefit is my focus.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I've worked with and had experiences with interactions with meetings, engagement with a lot of people in the political realm, all the way from the state level and from the to the federal level, from
yeah,
local, county, state executives, some personal friends of our family for a long time have been associated with uh, legislatures and
hmm,
legislation throughout the state. We frequently are in Jeff City and those kinds of things, but there's always been an expectation that they are there to do the business of their constituents. And so for this huge waste of money, that's what it comes down to. What I am aligned with in my work at the chamber is making sure that we get the maximum benefit for a reasonable
yeah,
value.
yeah,
So when I looked at this special election, the recall election, and like I said, just taking that small microcosm, just say not to put anybody's financial business of what anybody is getting paid out there, but let's just say one polling place cost $5,000 and you multiply that, you have to open every poll because you can't restrict any voters' access. So to spend $5,000 in multiple 43 districts across the county and say we have to spend this $5,000 so that we can voice our displeasure in how the county executive spent or allocated money throughout his term serving as the county executive. And he would be the first one to say, that's a waste of money. Don't do that. And that's the only expectation. So I have to go into facing this election knowing that my vote is no, because what you're trying to do is actually what he would recommend you not do, which is not waste the
the money. Yeah,
money
yeah,
to if that's how you feel, if you feel like he should not continue to be the county executive, you have the opportunity a few weeks after that to be able to decide who can even run, and then within a year of that, decide who will continue to complete the term. So every issue that is of concern, that the overpayment of personal property tax. That'll be resolved by 2027. The stadium, well, we have a contract with the Chiefs and the Royals through 2030. So that'll be resolved. If not with Frank White's administration, in the next administration. And you have, as a voter, the opportunity to influence who makes that ultimate decision. So I feel like whoever the legislators are, whoever the petitioners are, the voters and the constituents not being considered of enough value to say this is not worth the money, and just being that whatever campaign funds or whatever fundraising was done to be able to call this election to say you can use your voice here in November, and it will affect through the next term
Yeah.
of whoever the county executive is, so that you can basically still accomplish the same task if that's your intention.
Yeah.
But to spend this money and spend this time that my personal investment is, I still have to go to the poll on September 30th, and I have to stay there all day, and they have to pay me to do that.
So basically, what we're doing is spending several hundreds of thousands of dollars for a 6-week difference,
Mhm.
or a 12-week difference. Let's say 12 weeks, because if you waited till November,
Wait
that's
till November is certified, then
yeah, yeah. So you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars for one question and a 12-week difference,
right.
and
And if it's
you won't get as many people to the polls as you would on November, because
exactly,
that's an actual general election.
right.
So, there's some questions, and the listeners are chomping at the bit for this one. So let's start with question number 1. Hi, Kim. I'm a taxpayer in Jackson County. I'm concerned about the cost of the special election. Why are we paying for this recall now instead of just waiting a year for the next election? What's the real cost, and is it worth it?
We can only estimate the cost because the cost of elections is legislatively, it is not disclosed, but we do know that there's cost associated, um, of course,
Yeah.
because it's not free to hold an election, it's not free to hold space, it's not free to create these opportunities. So I would say whatever the cost is, even if it's a minimal expense, there's going to be a minimal voter turnout because it's a special election. And voters are already prepared to go to the polls in November. So whenever the Board of Elections was presented with this petition and couldn't get it on the ballot in time for November, couldn't have any other address of it other than a special election, I feel like that was the time for the legislators to make a decision to say, okay, it's not worth it's too expensive
Mm-hmm.
to go ahead and host the special election, and we'll just use the money to be able to educate the voters. And they do that all the time for
Right.
elections,
Right.
decide to spend money on voter education. I would say that would be money
Money.
well spent,
Yeah.
because then you don't have to pay people to sit at the poll all day to answer one question. And for me specifically, you're paying me to be at the poll all day, and you also gonna have to pay for me to cast my vote early. And it's no.
Yeah.
So
Well,
you're
I mean, and actually, you're in my pocket. Come to think about it, because we pay you as well to sit at that poll all day when
yes.
I could use you at the chamber. Okay, let's go to question number 2. Question number 2. I'm worried about the political gridlock in the county. If the recall is successful, will it actually solve the problem that the county with the county legislator, or will it just lead to another political fight? That is a huge question,
Yeah.
because one, we go back to taxes are not
Reversed.
are not reversed, and they're not set by the county executors or executive or the legislators. It's just the assessments. So are we going to be gridlocked in the same thing? Are people going to be expecting the next appointed person to lower their taxes, to change the tax law, to
Right.
change the assessments? What are the expectations?
Because the levy board is who decides, and that's your still those are all voter decisions, but I feel like you're targeting your angst in the incorrect direction. So your levy board, your school boards, are the voters on bond issues are so the taxes are going to go up because we just passed for the first time in I don't 50 years
A bond.
a levy bond for the school district, which as a product of Kansas City, Missouri School District, LCPA. um, I am excited that we have accomplished, and for the most part, the people in the community are aware that there is time. There's time for the schools to be upgraded. There's time. It's time for the bond to pass. It's time for the education system to be modernized,
Yeah.
and that costs money. And as taxpayers, we're educated enough to know everything, including gasoline, costs more money. So the expectation that taxes will increase or that any legislators, even the levy board, will be able to not pass along that increase or not be affected by that increase. There's no way to do that. Everything costs more. It costs more for boards and nails. So you
Hmm.
can't build
Yeah, that's right.
without paying for the
That,
boards and the nails.
that's right. That's right. You know, it amazes me that, and I guess not, because when I look at that, it really, the average person only goes by what they hear on the news or from a friend or in the gossip circle or now our famous social media. Whatever Facebook says has to be true. Um, and one of the biggest things that I heard was um, Frank White doesn't show up to the meetings that the legislator meetings, and he sends his staffers. And uh, again, that goes back to not understanding how the policies and the processes work. He does not have to attend meetings.
Right.
And I have been to at least one, actually two meetings where I sit in the back, and the blatant attack that took place on the one meeting he was in there, and then the continued attack when he wasn't in there that was on his staffer, was very uncomfortable for me. And I think that utilizing the Jackson County residents' emotional feelings because their taxes went up to twist this knife and make it seem like we didn't get anything done because he didn't show up to meetings is not only unfair, it's untrue.
Yeah,
And
I
so,
agree. And I feel like like I said, lifelong resident of Kansas City, and however I may look or sound, I'm of the generation. I graduated from Lincoln in 90. So I have and our whole community has. I don't want to just say I as if personally I'm representing I'm apolitical, any political agenda. But I say to that, I felt uncomfortable with that response to Frank White. I felt uncomfortable with those personal attacks to the Beatties
yeah,
um
yeah,
as well,
yeah,
who I know are only in the community doing this work in the community. Frank White has been an advocate for me, people who, inner city,
yes,
urban
yes,
voters, urban members of the community for as long as I've been in Kansas City for my whole over 50 years.
yes,
That's a long time to advocate for and to be the voice in the room to say, okay, all of these powers that be that the first district, North Heartland has a lot of influence because they have a lot of money, because they have a lot of property
Yeah.
that has
Yeah.
different value than some of the urban community. And we all know about the divide and Easter Truce, and we know property in Mission is valued differently than property on Prospect.
Right.
So for all of that time to have spent 50 years building trust and advocating for this group of voters, there's no indication that he suddenly, through some revelation, decided that he's going to throw us under the bus. And so I feel like your reputation speaks for you.
Right.
And I feel like he's been in those spaces fighting for decades.
Yeah.
So I feel like he has earned this opportunity to say, trust me, I'm not going to throw y'all under the bus now. I haven't,
Right.
and I won't.
Right.
And the change that's coming and the expense that's coming, I'm trying to cushion it and buffer as much as possible, because we cannot afford to pay Johnson County, Mission, Kansas tax rates, even though they might be across the street. We're sitting on state line now.
Right.
The people across the street from us don't pay what
Well, we
we
pay.
pay
Right.
when it comes to property tax, but they're across the street.
Yeah.
And there is, I feel like, a responsibility. My no is me saying I trust that the decades worth of advocacy that has been done for our community's behalf is not going to be just subjected to the whims of the current political
Right.
trends.
Right.
I don't believe that I don't have anything to indicate that. I feel like any fighter, after you fight your 12 rounds in the ring, you get to tap in the next person. And I feel like we have to give some allowance to Mr. White for him to be able to bow out gracefully. And I don't feel like him being scapegoated should remove the opportunity to do that.
Right.
And again, not making any, I haven't said the D word or the R word,
Yeah. Right.
but not making any political reference, but just respect the work
Yeah. Yeah.
and respect the reputation and expect respect.
Yeah. One of the things that I heard a lot about was Frank White would not release the ARPA dollars that he said on the ARPA dollars. And it was what we don't talk about is the fact that that was the last part of the ARPA dollars. Nobody talks about how much of the ARPA dollars were released before that.
Exactly.
And then because there is a great need for one, security purposes. I did some of my own research, and this is not, I want to make it clear, this is not just something that I got from Frank White. This is something that I researched and I looked at, and I even talked to some of the staffers over there. They purchased a building that needed some upgrades on it. And part of those ARPA dollars could be used for the upgrade and make it more accessible and easier for the Jackson County residents to get whatever services that they needed through the county done and get through a line or get through a system instead of lining up and being in hallways at Jackson County, where one, they bring all types of criminal court cases through there, some very dangerous, some not,
Mm-hmm.
but y- you're putting people at risk.
Right.
And you're putting the law enforcement at risk. And so for us to have a legislative group, a group of legislators who were totally against using any of the ARPA dollars to finish the building, and be satisfied, negotiate, and say, okay, we will take the rest of it and disperse it. And that's where I say lack of negotiation. Their
Want it
response
all.
was, we don't want the building. Sell it. We didn't ask for it. Sell the building. We want to stay here. We're not going to spend any money over there. We're going to give all the money to the people. But to what motivation are you doing that? And then, secondly, in a conversation that I had, one of the things that I heard that Frank White was saying was ARPA dollars were not money to just give so people can just squander and throw away.
With no
It with
accountability.
no accountability, and then no the money should have been able to be an investment in the building or rebuilding or making or
ADA
it,
compliance.
all the things that needed to happen. But also, even in the organizations that were receiving funding, your accountability.
Yeah.
What how did that money do anything but pay salaries, or what was it that where that money was able to rejuvenate
Yeah,
and be
and mitigate the risk.
and
A
mitigate the
lot of
risk?
people have those conversations, and I always think I go back to, right after the current administration came into office and started changing things. Because, it happened here at the chamber because we're subjected to, what
Yeah.
happens in the federal economy directly
Yes.
affects what happens in, the chamber and MCDC economies.
Yes.
And one of the things that I heard, I'll never forget this, one of the first sessions that I went to about how do we answer and how do we not panic and how do we relate and what is the nonprofit world's response and what's the philanthropic response? It was to risk management. And it reminded me that even before we were wise enough to know what was coming, perhaps experience and wisdom, Frank White was mitigating risk
Yeah.
before the whole rest of the world was aware
Right.
that these risks needed to be mitigated. And risk management, I'm sure, comes second nature after you have, as I said, spent decades
That's
in
right.
these places and spaces,
That's right.
being able to anticipate needs and be able to mitigate risks to make sure that those needs are met is part of the benefit of having an experienced legislator that we get
Yeah.
with
So
not only Frank White, but other experienced legislators. And I know we're all for voting in the new, giving the young people their chance and modernizing politics. And I'm for that too. I support that too, as long as they don't forget the benefit of wisdom.
that's right. That's right. So we got one more question, and I'm going to throw it out here. It says, my property taxes have gone up so much, and the stadium funding issue seems stuck. How will this recall election, regardless of the outcome, affect these two big issues that are so important to Jackson County's future? Jackson County's future, and that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's an interesting question about how the recall, because at the end of the day, whoever gets in there, it's still going to have to go back to the people to be voted upon.
Yes.
And just because the person in that seat supports it doesn't mean that it will pass.
Exactly.
Because
Because what if they ask the voters?
well,
What if these millionaires, owners,
I'm gonna
and
say this.
sports teams ask the voters to pay for it?
I'm gonna say this. The people that were at all of these rallies, that were at all of these stakeholder meetings, who was making all the noise, was the KC Tenant uh,
Association.
Association.
Mhm.
And I just told someone the other day that 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 group, that association, they are very, very effective.
Mhm.
They have changed the narrative on how to get people to hear a different side.
Mhm.
And so and they were the ones that were very boisterous when it came to um, blocking the Royal Stadium and the and getting those bond dollars and those approvals for the Royals and the Kansas City Chiefs. Um, what we don't want to say out loud or admit out loud is that there is a community that really doesn't care that Kansas City is a big sports town.
Right.
And they really are not, they're not aware that of the economy and how it works.
And it's a hot button issue because it's popular. And like you said, it's, it gets Facebook likes, it gets the likes, it gets the responses, it gets the thumbs up. And it's easy to, it's easy to TikTok too. The
This is true. Get a
teens,
meme going. Yeah.
the Swifties, it's easy.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to the actual finances, there are things that the legislators have to take into consideration, and that the stakeholders, they have your wisdom and experience in the benefit of the city. They have done the work to move Kansas City to a tier 2 city and moving us towards KC forward to
Yeah.
move us closer to a tier 1 city. That work to do that, it is tedious, it's non-glorious, it is sometimes distracting, but it's important.
Yeah.
And what the maybe TikTok generation doesn't realize is that the grunt of that work and the dirt of that work doesn't look good on Facebook. It's not a cute meme.
Right.
It's not, you don't want to dance to it.
Right.
It's crying, it's tears, it's hair pulling, it's gray hair growing. So a lot of that work that I feel like we need to appreciate when we ask that type of question, what is it really going to change? Well, for me personally, I always like to try to take it back to the dining room table. My mother is of a generation now where she's protected. Her personal property tax isn't going to go up anymore.
Right.
And I felt like uh uh County Executive White, along as some other legislators, were really intentional about making sure that that information got out, that that information was promoted, that the access to that benefit was widely recognized. I mean, we had somebody announce it at our church, and
Yeah.
I came in the office and asked you, Miss Kim, did you do your because, and I feel like those types of things, that is the important work that a legislator may not know until they hear this podcast and listen to this conversation and hear me say, thank you, I appreciate that, because then I don't have to worry about my personal family's legacy.
You're right.
And your daughter doesn't have to worry about it. And so I feel like those are the type of things, those are the type of conversations that whatever happens to the personal property tax for the next 12 years until I'm in the category where mine is protected and frozen, and people may not know, but there was a move in the legislature to do what the county could do,
Right.
which is place the senior and elderly, remove them from harm.
And increase. Yeah.
Yeah, and protect them from increase by freezing their property tax after they were seniors, and now they have paid property taxes
Right.
through these fluctuating rates for all these years. So those type of things I think are important. And if they are important to the voters, they can decide who's on the legislator next. They can decide who serves on the Jackson County Board, who serves in the city council, who serves as their
That's
state
right.
representative. If those things are important, you have some voice and you have some opportunity, even if you're on Kansas City Tenants and you want to elevate that narrative that they so closely guard and protect.
Right.
You have the opportunity to influence that by promoting a candidate.
Yeah.
And moving a candidate into that into those positions. So I feel like the special election, I mean, it will be, it's coming now, it's
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
It will be what it is, but I hope that we can take this waste of money and apply some of the county executive's wisdom to being a good steward and mitigating risk and instilling accountability and reducing harm, as much as possible and apply that wisdom going forward so that we don't waste this money this same way again.
So before we close, I will say this. This special election is not just for the people that want to recall Frank White. This is also a special election for those of us who support legislative executive excuse me, county executive Frank White and what he has done for the county. This is for us to also go out and have a voice about wasting money, because that's what it is, and not allowing a few people, because that's what they're banking on. They're banking on people who say they support him not to show up, and those who that support this measure will show up. So this is a time, even though it's an inconvenience, please, please, please go to the go to the poll. Let your voice be heard, regardless to either side, and know that next time, before you sign a petition, before you jump on a bandwagon, do your research. And I mean, really do your research. Not listen to KMBC, KCTV5, KSHB. They report what they're given. Not that they're, not reporting actual, they're reporting what they're giving. So if I am interviewing someone who is against Frank White, I am going to give you that information. If I'm interviewing someone who is for Frank White, that is what they're reporting. They are a non-biased system. And so whatever you choose to listen to is what you will follow. I don't listen to either side. I do my own research and I make up my own mind. And that's all I'm going to ask you to do. So as of today, this will end our episode of Straight from the Heart. Of course, I am so pleased to be able to have someone in my office with that much knowledge who keeps us on point. She lets us know things that we really absolutely don't know. She is a researcher by trade. Trust me, she is going to dig deep, which we need that. And I do want to highlight her and spotlight her and say that she has been a real source for us. And even more so, even more than I even knew. And so being able to see her blossom and do what she does. And I mean, she's doing a darn thing. So again, thank you. Thank you for listening. Before I shut off, I have to give all the shout outs and all the props due to my production team, which is AGA Production, the best and the finest production team this side of the Mississippi.
Top tier.
If you have not seen the Lifetime movie Girl in the Garage, go pull it up. You can find it on YouTube, and then look for their release of My Sharia Moore. They are fabulous. And then look at all of my production. That's them. All right. Thanks again for listening. Be good, be honest, and believe in the truth. Thank you again. This is Straight from the Heart.